All right, good. Let's push on, all right? So don't forget the journey, okay? That's the big picture, all right? But we're looking at details. What do you want to look for as you are moving through? So let's look at this next section that starts here with advanced, step one, more things to look for. I want to go through this, pretty quick because I want us to look at a passage. But so some other things to look for, general and specific. General is like saying, I like ice cream, and then to say I like apple pie. I like dessert. If you have a big category, I like dessert, and then to say I like ice cream, I like apple pie, I like this and that, I like candy bars. All right, that's from the general statement, then a bunch of specifics. You can go the other way around. You can say I like apple pie, I like ice cream, I like Snickers candy bars, especially if it's at a Blizzard, at Sonic, or anyway, but then you summarize it by saying I like dessert. And so Paul does this in Romans, all right? He'll say at the beginning, I urge you, we've had this passage several times, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. It's a very general statement. It's an overview statement. But we read a few more verses down in Romans 12, and then he says, here's the specifics, all right? Love must be sincere, hate what's evil, cling to it. Now he tells us some very specific things. So he's gone from general to specific, okay? So watch those questions and answers. If you see a question and an answer, a dialogue taking place within a narrative, I just put a cue out there and then look for the answer. So in Mark, at the beginning in Mark, this is fun. You're reading, and here's the thing too. You want to deal with the smallest unit you really want to study is a paragraph. If you're in the epistles of Paul, try to study a paragraph. You may be only interested in one verse, but for context, you got to put it in a whole paragraph. If you're in the Gospels, we call them an episode. So you got to take a whole little event, an episode. So in one of these episodes here, in Mark 2, there's a question, who can forgive sins but God alone? Remember, they cut a hole in the roof, they lowered the guy down, and Jesus said, your sins are forgiven. They said, who can say that? So there's a question, and then Jesus answers it. But I want you to know the Son of Man is authority on earth to forgive sins. So you had a question, you had an answer, you write that in the dialogue, you're looking at then you read to the next unit. And in the Gospels, as in Paul, after you've studied your one little story, your episode, and you've done all your details, then you want to look at the episode before and look at the episode after and see if there's some kind of connection. So we've read this first one, who can forgive sins? Question, there's an answer. You go to the next one, and in the very next episode, you get another question. And they'll ask the next question, look down here, number 2, why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? And then Jesus answers that. So now I'm excited. I got 2 stories in a row with question and answer. I run to the third one. You get another question. How is it that John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees are fasting, but yours are not? And you can look at the next page. So here's the questions. We're going to get 4 questions, 4 stories. There's a question by the Pharisees and an answer by Jesus. All right, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. The 5th question, Jesus asks, what's lawful to do on the Sabbath, he says, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? And the answer to that is the Pharisees are now plotting to kill Jesus. So the question and answer scene ties these 5 episodes together. Question, answer, question, answer, question. Pharisees, Jesus, Pharisees, Jesus, Pharisees, Jesus, Pharisees, Jesus, Jesus, what's fair to do? And the Pharisees' response is they try to kill him. This is at the beginning of Mark. Now, if you go to the end of Mark, in Mark 11:27 to 12:40, you're at the end of Mark. He's in Jerusalem. He's at the temple in Jerusalem. And now we have this big scene, and the same thing is going to happen. The Pharisees are going to come and ask questions. Do we give tax to Caesar? Jesus will give an answer. They'll ask another question. Jesus will give an answer. They'll ask another question. Jesus will give an answer. They'll ask another question. Jesus will give an answer. Jesus will ask the question. What happened here? They were plotting to kill him. What happens there at the end? They kill him. And so you have this opens and closes the book of Mark. These are the bookends, these question and answer type of things. So it all starts with that first observation. There's a question cue. You don't know where you're going with that when you first see it. Oh, and there's an answer. Okay, all right, great, question and answer. Is that important? I don't know. In the next story, you say, oh, there's another one, And then, 3 weeks later, you're at the end of Mark. You say, oh, more questions and answers. You start reading along, and then you say, oh, this opens. This is how Mark has tied his book together. You think that's accidental? There's 5 question and answers at open mark and 5 question and answers at the end, 4 of them Pharisees, 1 with Jesus. You think that's a coincidence? No, this is important. It's what the author is doing to structure his book and to give it some of this fun aesthetic quality to it. So questions and answers sometimes can be very, very helpful in what you find. All right, so related to this, okay, of course, is dialogue. And I'm going to skip over that, okay? Mostly this is about Habakkuk. What happens, real quick, okay? Habakkuk cries out and says, how long do I have to look at all this violence, all these terrible things are going on? Why don't you do something, God? That's what Habakkuk says, 1, 2 to 4, all right? And God responds, he says, well, I am doing something. I'm raising up the Babylonians to come and destroy you. And Habakkuk says, that's not what I had in mind. And so he kind of tries to talk him out of it. God says, nonetheless, I'm going to do it. And then Habakkuk says, okay. So that's question and answer is how the whole book of Habakkuk. There's dialogue between God and Habakkuk. The whole book is structured that way. Purpose and result statements, similar to cause and effect, but this gives you a direct purpose, direct result. I'm going to skip on through this because we want to get to some other stuff. The actions and the roles of people and the actions and the roles of God. I think this is an important thing. When you're reading through the text, what is it that God does? And what is it that Jesus does? And what are they calling on us to do? And so those are important things to observe. And a lot of times the meaning of the text is tied up in those. So they're telling us, follow God's example. All right. I am moving around here. Then Christ loves us. He gave himself up for us. So we're supposed to follow him as dearly loved children and walk in the way of love because of what he did. So you have this actions of God, actions of Jesus, and what we're expected to do as well. Another thing, emotional terms. We tend to skip over this, okay? A lot of time, and the Bible is packed with emotion. And here Paul in Galatians, I plead with you, brothers and sisters, you did me no wrong, it was an illness. So he's pouring his heart out, and he's very emotional. And the tone of the text is part of the meaning. And that's the next one, number 9, the tone. Notice the difference in tone here. In Colossians, this verse, since then you've been raised with Christ and set your hearts on things above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. So Paul is just explaining away, teaching away, okay, there's no real strong tone in it. But look at Galatians. You foolish Galatians. Who has bewitched you before your very eyes? Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed as crucified. So he goes on, and he is chewing them out. He is upset with them. When I was in high school, my dad was in Southeast Asia. Okay, the Vietnam War was on. Dad was in the Air Force. So Dad's gone, so I'm at home with Mom. I'm in high school, so I should be helping out, So anyway, so Mom said, would you mow the lawn? I said, sure. But I didn't. I just put it off, And Mom's not quite like Dad, so I could get away with it. She asked me to mow the lawn again, and I'd put it off, okay? And so then I got a letter one day from Dad in Southeast Asia, and it was special. Dad never wrote me. He always wrote Mom, and then Mom would relay the message. So I'm so excited. I got a letter from my dad. He's overseas fighting this war. I go in my room, and I open it up, and it said, you had flat better mow the Dad burned lawn. So I said, no, dear Danny, no love, Dad, nothing. Okay, all right. So tone is important, okay, to the message. So what did I do? Walked right outside, fired up that lawnmower, mowed the lawn, okay? Tone, all right? So that's what Paul's doing in Galatians, all right? He is mad. They are falling away, and he's upset. So tone is part of the meaning, okay? Part of the meaning. All right, so we got, now, for our practice passage, here's what I want us to do. I want us to run on down into this next step, because I only got you guys for a little while longer. All right, so now, like I said, once you have studied a passage, if you're doing a paragraph in Paul, the best thing for context, okay, the best thing you can do to make sure that you have not misinterpreted a text, or that you're not coming up with something that God did not intend in the text. The easiest thing to do is, if you have a paragraph, read the one before and read the one after. All right? Sets the context. You will get rid of 90% of the heresies in the world this way, okay? All right? When your pastor's up there preaching, anytime you hear something going on, your eyes ought to be going up the text, read that paragraph. You ought to be going down the text, read the paragraph before it, putting things in context, okay? All right, so that's context. That just sets it, and that eliminates a lot of the goofy stuff that's out there just by putting things in context. Now, So, and Paul connects his stuff logically. You can outline Paul. He says this is true and then gives 3 points, and if there's 3, that's the way Paul moved. Now, the Gospels are different, okay? The Gospel stories are moving along, but they are also interconnected. And sometimes it's not on the surface at all. They're master storytellers. They want you to dig a little deeper. They want you to think about it. They don't want you to just casually read over the surface. And so many of the Gospel stories, if you do the detailed kind of study that we said, look into it, and then you go to the next story, and you look at some detailed study there, and then you back up, you put the 2 stories together, and now you say, okay, whoa, this same word showed up. Or, whoa, this is the exact opposite. They said this guy is, or, whoa, so you start to see some connections between them. So in the Gospels, they're saying something in each story, but they're also saying something by the way they put the stories together, the way the stories fit together. All right? Okay, now, so to illustrate that, to make sure I can convince you of this, so let's run to the end here. Let me get back on this page. So this is a helpful one here, but I want you to look at this last one. All right, so this one here. Go to the end, all right? This practice passage, Mark 5:21 to 43. All right, so now here's the deal. There's 2 stories here, okay? One is a guy named Jairus. He's a synagogue official. His daughter is dying. He hears Jesus is in town. He comes and asks Jesus to come heal his daughter. All right, Jesus goes and his daughter dies. Jesus raises the daughter. That's one story. Mark could have told it just like that. All right, in the middle of the story, there's an interruption. This woman has come. She's been bleeding. She comes up, touches Jesus, and he heals her. All right, now Mark has put that right in the middle. That's probably the way it happened, but he has forced us to kind of compare the 2 stories. So what we want to do, I want you to I'm going to read the passage. I want you to think and study. But what we're looking for is strong similarities or strong differences between Jairus and his story and the woman and her story. Okay, all right. Now, you can scan through it and read. I'm going to read it out loud real quick to you. Okay, all right. So when Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue rulers named Jairus was there. Seeing Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleaded earnestly with him. My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she'll be healed and live. So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there. Interruption, okay? New story, right? And a woman was there who had been, and we put little marks here. Why is this woman here? What's the story? There's a change, So these little alarms should be going off. You mark this out in the margin. Okay, she had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I'll be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus, and you can see this guy reaching through, right? Just gets the end of his rope. And Jesus stops him, turns around. And once Jesus realized the power had gone out from him, he turned around in the crowd and he asked, who touched my clothes? The disciples are rolling their eyes, like, what do you mean? There's a crowd here. Anyway, the disciples, you can see the people crowding against you, the disciples answer, and yet you ask, who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who'd done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Be freed from your suffering. While Jesus was still speaking, some men came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue ruler. Your daughter's dead, they said. Why bother to teach her anymore? And ignoring what they said, Jesus told the synagogue ruler, don't be afraid, just believe. He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue ruler, Jesus saw a commotion, people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep. But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him, and he went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, Talitha cum, which means, little girl, I say to you, get up. Immediately the girl stood up and walked around. She was 12 years old. At this they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give her something to eat. All right, now, what I want you to do is list some comparisons or contrasts about each, things from the story. Like, for instance, Jairus, we know his name. The woman, We don't. Okay. Jairus is a man. The woman is a woman. Okay. So start out with some simple things like that. Okay. What you may look into is, how do they approach Jesus? When do they approach Jesus? When does the healing take place? How does Jesus respond to them? Okay, what's similar and what's different in the details between the two? So take about 10 minutes, okay? There's a lot of stuff here. All right, I know you guys are not done, okay? You need an hour, really, but we don't have that. But you'll see different things. So we said at the beginning, okay, so, she's a woman, okay, and he's a man. What's his job? Who is he? Synagogue official or synagogue ruler, okay? How many times did they call him that? Scan down, or you got to go quick. I don't know, a bunch, okay. Is it 4? 4, 5, okay. Notice they call him Jairus at the beginning, but from then on, synagogue official, synagogue official, synagogue official, synagogue official, okay. What's her job? Who is she? Yeah, no, but that's the answer right there. Oh, they don't even give us her name, okay? All we know about her is that she's got this problem, she's been bleeding, okay? The bleeding like that problem. You didn't know this, but culturally it excludes her from the synagogue. And so, is Jairus an important guy in that town? Yeah, he's at the top, okay? So he's an important guy. She's a nobody, all right? That's kind of how it starts out, all right? All right, so what else did you see? Shout it out loud, just so I can hear it, yeah. Okay, yeah. There's a difference in faith here, okay? She comes, has touched him. Jesus acknowledges that. Jesus tells her, right? He tells her, your faith has saved you afterwards. And your faith has actually healed you. That's an interesting word, okay? I'm sorry that the lines are jumping this up. But that word can mean healed or saved, either one in Greek. So the translators didn't know what to do with that. Because it looks like here she's healed, but there's more than that as well. So her faith has been effective. But Jairus, no, does it say he believes? It never does, okay? And Jesus says, don't give up, don't fear, only believe. I think once they tell him his daughter has died, I think he's done. I mean, that's the way I read the story, but that's not the details you look. Okay, what else did you guys see? I'm not going to write it down, stuff's moving around. Yeah. Say it out loud.
12 years.
I still can't hear you. Say it louder.
12 years.
Okay, yeah, that's number 12 showed up, right? And what does that mean? I have no idea. Okay, I don't know, but but she's 12 years old. Okay, and the woman's been bleeding 12 years. Did you guys catch that? So that's something. It's time to start again. She has been suffering for exactly the same amount of time Jairus has been enjoying his daughter. That might be one way to look at it, okay? But that does draw the two together. All right, great. What else? Yes? Say that louder. Hold on. Okay, yeah. There's a private healing, right? And a public healing. Okay? Now, good. All right, so who has the private healing? Jairus, okay? All right, who has the public healing? The woman, right? Now, how did the inquiries come? Yeah, the inquiries are just the opposite, okay? Jairus comes very publicly. It's very public. He's a big guy. Hey, get out of the way. Here's a synagogue official. He comes before Jesus, okay? Makes his request. Come and heal my daughter. It's a very public request. The healing is done privately. And the woman, on the other hand, how private, how public is she? She didn't even tell him, right? She didn't even tell him. She just sneaks in. And we don't know, okay, is it just because she's shy, or is it because she feels as a woman in that culture she can't come before this famous teacher, Jesus? Maybe the bleeding problem is something she doesn't want to discuss in public. We don't know what the deal is, but whatever, it's totally private. She just comes and touches it, and Jesus turns around and in front of the whole village, tells her that she's healed, gives her status, she can now go to the synagogue, and tells her that she's been saved. She's been healed. And so the two are inverse. One comes, the request is public, the healing's private. One's private, the other's public, okay? Follow up on this, okay, the way these are done. Which one is the most urgent? Which request is the most urgent? Yeah, Jairus, really? He comes, my daughter's about to die. She is about to die. Right? Hurry, hurry, hurry. Jesus says, I'm coming, you know. So come on, Jairus says, let's go. They're moving along. He stops to talk to this woman. How long has she been bleeding? 12 years. Can't you wait 10 more minutes, you know? And so hers is not urgent. It's a long deal, but Jesus stops. Who gets healed first? It's her, the one that's not urgent. And so he puts off the urgent one. He does the urgent one first. So yeah, the sequence of the healing and the way the requests are is important. Yeah. What else?
Jesus deals very gently with the woman and then deals very strictly with the man and his
Okay. Yeah, it's very similar. The way there's not any big dramatic, huge thing. There's a very gently. How is it done? How does he heal her? Or how does she get healed?
She touches him.
All right. Yeah, she touches him, right? The woman. But then Jesus touches the girl. Okay. So you've got touch going both ways. All right. The comparison. Okay. All right. Yeah. Great. Good. What else?
One of them he says, don't tell anybody. The other one says, go in peace.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, as Baptists, how can you say don't tell anybody? You know, what do you mean? We're saying go out and tell everybody. That's kind of a surprising text for us. You just raised this girl from the dead. Come on, let's broadcast it. But if you put that in context, in Mark, Jesus has done a lot of miracles already. So it's not like they don't know. Okay, so the word is out. He doesn't need it to get the word out. And I think then we're left with this private and public type of thing. That Jesus perhaps doesn't want that day to be remembered for him raising a little girl from the dead as much as he wants it to be remembered for the woman. Maybe what the point of the private, public, and them telling. So as we start to see these things and put them together, then we're in a position to start asking what it might mean, okay? All right, you guys are doing great. Okay, this is great. What else?
He calls her daughter.
Yeah. Did you guys catch this? Okay. How many daughters in that story? Huh? How many daughters in that story? 2. Okay, right? Jairus comes, says, can you heal my daughter? And then Jesus is coming, the woman touches him, and then what did Jesus call her? Daughter, okay. So he calls her his daughter. That's the title of my sermon on this, The Tale of Two Daughters, okay? Right? And so you have Jairus. And here, once we get the daughter context, I mean, she's probably older than he is. All right? But the daughter context, again, adds compassion. It adds, a lot of things. But it also puts us in to perhaps we can answer better the who gets healed first, Jesus, there's been a request made. Jairus says, come and heal my daughter. Come and heal my daughter. And Jesus is on his way. But on the way, he runs into one of his kids. Okay, so certainly he stops, he heals his kid, his daughter. Your faith has healed you, takes care of her. So, yeah, the 2 references to daughter. That's great. All right, you guys are doing good. This is great. Yeah, what else?
I saw that, but I was actually talking more so about how Jesus, her identity to him is my daughter, and Jairus' identity doesn't actually change. It seems like it just stays the synagogue ruler.
Yeah. No, that's good. You hear what he said? Okay, he said, the synagogue ruler kind of stays the synagogue ruler. When Jesus acknowledges the woman as the daughter, that's kind of a change in a relationship, a public affirmation of what, and her, as she comes by faith, I think she's also saved at the same point. That's the way I read it. Then that relationship changes. Jairus, he's silent after the death. He stays the synagogue. How does Jesus usually get along with synagogue rulers? Not good. That's not the bunch that accepts him. Okay, and so you can also push that as to ask, why would Jairus, the synagogue leader, go to Jesus and ask him? Why did Jairus go in the first place? What drives him? What? He's desperate, right? His daughter's about to die. He didn't have it. Now, between you and me, it's not in the story. Between you and me, how it would work in my house, there's a wife behind that. Okay? It's saying, you go and ask Jesus. My cousin Mordecai said that Jesus was healed. You better get down there. Hey, I'm not going. The man's a heretic. Well, this is the conversation I think we didn't get. The man's a heretic. Now, you get down there and ask him to come. Yeah, that's what I think happened. Okay, but anyway, synagogue officials generally have been pretty hostile to Jesus. And so that synagogue official, and then in the middle of all of that, you have this woman that comes, and finds deliverance and finds salvation. That, part of that contrast and how those relations are. Okay. All right. Yeah, great. What else?
There was
Yeah.
ownership on the women's part, but representation for Jairus for his daughter.
Okay, yeah. I mean, she claims that she did touch him.
Yeah, she brought herself to Jesus, but
Yeah.
Jairus went in place of his daughter to bring Jesus.
Okay, yeah, to bring Jesus back to the house. Okay, yeah, good. That's a difference as well. Yeah. What else? Yes. Yeah, say that loud. I still can't hear you.
Please him at his feet.
They both go to his feet.
Oh, yeah. Why didn't I hear that? Okay, that's an obvious thing. Okay, all right, great. So, and I'm sorry, okay. I got new hearing stuff, but it's not working quite right. So anyway, but so let's talk about the falling at his feet, all right? Both of them fall at his feet. Did you catch that? Okay. Both Jairus falls at his feet, the woman falls at his feet, all right? So what's different about him?
The woman falls at his feet when Jesus sees her, but Jairus falls at his feet when he sees Jesus.
Okay, all right, exactly. Jairus falls at his feet before making the request, okay? The woman falls at his feet after she's been healed, he turns around. So she falls. So Jairus falls as part of the request. The woman falls as part of the, my goodness, I've been healed. Who is this? And so she falls in a little more worshipful adoration kind of thing, while Jairus is part of the pleading. And so you get this falling at feet before. He comes up in front of her, in front of Jesus. She comes from behind. You got a couple of different things like that playing, but the falling on feet. Okay, all right, so all of that. You did great on that. Okay, now, what do we conclude from that? This is a complicated story. And Mark has written it, pulled it together. Of course, I think it happened this way. But he's put the details in here that we can read over it quickly, and it's great. He healed the woman. He raised the girl from the dead. You can get a lot of good things out of that, power about Jesus Christ. But when you start reading a little more carefully and you start making these observations into the text, now we get another level of meaning. Now we can say, what is he saying by the way they are together? Now there's something about the woman, okay, emerging as kind of more of the hero in the story. This is one of Jesus's daughters. She's a nobody, okay, not like Jairus. He's the important guy. She's a nobody. But for Jesus, there are no nobodies, okay? There are no nobodies. And so as we see her kind of exonerated and lifted up and acknowledged in there, it's telling us something about Jesus. It's also teaching us something about people in general, ministry in general as well. And so comparing the two then adds another little layer onto that, okay? All right, now, I want to say one more thing, okay? So before we wrap it up, those two stories are stories 3 and 4 in a 4-story sequence. All right, are you with me? Okay, so we just jumped in at the end. We got stories 3 and 4. All right, story 1, Jesus is on the storm. Okay, they're about to sink. Remember, Jesus is asleep. They're on the boat. They're on their boat. Sea of Galilee. Remember, it's night. Storm. They're about to drown. Master, don't you care? He speaks to the storm, and the storm stops. Okay, they come over there. They land on the shore. This demoniac guy with the demons comes running out. Okay, nobody could stop him. Nobody could heal him. And so he's worried. Have you come to torment me? So Jesus eventually cast all the demons out. Okay. Then we have this Jairus woman, and then we have the bleeding woman, and then we have Jairus' daughter. Now, what ties all those 4 together? There's this hopeless situation, this hopelessness, the storm. The ship's about to sink. Who can do this? Okay, and in that hopeless situation of the storm, Jesus calms the storm. The stress on the demoniac is that nobody could be able to help him. They tied him up with chains and ropes. He always broke loose. Nobody could heal. Nobody could help. This guy was a hopeless situation. And Jesus now was able to deliver this man. Now we come to the woman, and you see 12 years. All the doctors spent all their money. We got all of those details telling us how hopeless her situation was. Got another hopeless situation. Jesus is able to interact. Then we come to the little girl, and she is dead. Okay, that's it. That's as hopeless as you get. And so you're at this end of this hopelessness. And so we got Jesus then raising this little girl from the dead. Another hopeless situation. Now, when you go back and tie them all together and you say, who's the audience? Who's there? Who sees all four of these things? Those disciples are here, all right? This is the beginning. This is the beginning. We're in Mark 4. He's training his disciples, okay? So who sees all four of these stories? This was quite a day, right? 24-hour stretch here, man, that he pulled those disciples through, that they can see that the Son of Man, Jesus Christ, has authority over all hopeless situations, whether it's the storms, whether it's the demon-possessed guy across the Sea of Galilee, the disciples knew, whether it's sickness, and they had no hospitals back then, or whether it's death itself. And so those four stories tie together, these two at the end, bring this thing to a tight conclusion. And each of those stories makes sense by itself, but when you pull them together, it adds this extra power, I think, extra depth. We see he's training the disciples. If you ask, what are the fears of a first century fisherman? They had respect for that sea and the storms. They had scared of that demon guy across the lake. Sickness, of course, and death. Jesus is addressing these fears that they have, showing in hopeless situations that he can address those. All right, and you only get into that if you're reading, marking, question, putting the things together, and then these things start to fall in place, and you can say, wow, there's another level. You still can get the individual meanings of each story, but you can fit them together by looking at the details and say, wow, Mark is saying something else right here. All right, well,